In the endless darkness of the Warhammer 40k galaxy, countless horrors slumber, some waiting to be rediscovered, others banished to the recesses of memory by the Imperium's relentless purge of heresy. Among these enigmatic terrors lies the tale of the Uvath, a race cloaked in shadow, their existence largely erased by the inexorable march of the Great Crusade. To even whisper their name is to invoke dread among scholars and inquisitors alike, for the Uvath were no mere xenos species. They were beings of immense power, wielding the corrupting energies of the warp with an unnatural proficiency, blending arcane sorcery with unholy technological mastery. This ancient foe rose to prominence in the Calyx Expanse, a region that would later form the foundation of the Imperium's Calixis sector. Long before humanity's expansion into this region, the Uvath held dominion over vast territories. They were tyrants of an empire built upon blood and sorcery, enslaving countless populations to fuel their insidious designs. Their society thrived on the manipulation of life, bending the physical and spiritual realms to their will through arcane rites. To the Uvath, power was not just a tool, but a purpose, a corrupt philosophy that elevated them to terrifying heights before casting them into oblivion. The collapse of their empire coincided with the arrival of humanity's Great Crusade, led by the Emperor's indomitable forces. The Imperium's legions swept through the stars, eradicating threats with ruthless efficiency, and the Uvath's dark reign was no exception. Yet, the extinction of the Uvath was no ordinary victory. It was a battle fought not just with bolters and blades, but with the combined might of the Imperium's psychers, the arcane expertise of the Mechanicum, and the unyielding will of the Emperor himself. The Uvath did not merely die. They were purged, their artifacts and knowledge scattered or destroyed, their legacy reduced to haunted whispers. But as with all things in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, nothing truly vanishes. The echoes of the Uvath's influence persist, hidden in cursed relics and forbidden tomes. Rogue traders, archaeotech hunters, and even inquisitors have uncovered fragments of their lost empire, often at great cost. These remnants tell of a race whose mastery of the warp rivaled even the most gifted psychers of the Eldar, a race whose downfall serves as both a warning and a temptation to those who seek power beyond understanding. Who were the Uvath truly? What secrets did their empire conceal? And why does the Imperium still fear their memory millennia after their supposed annihilation? In this exploration, we will delve into the shadowed history of the Uvath, uncovering the twisted reality of their existence and the dark truths that even the Inquisition dares not speak aloud. Through their rise and fall, we will see how this ancient menace shaped the galaxy, and how their story remains an ever-present threat to those who dare to remember. With the first steps taken into their forgotten empire, we turn now to the key players who shaped this tale of corruption, power, and annihilation. The Uvath may be gone, but the echoes of their influence linger in the hearts of those who dare to seek them out. Let us unravel the threads of their dark tapestry, starting with the forces and entities that define their grim legacy. The origins of the Uvath are shrouded in an obscurity that seems almost deliberate, as if the galaxy itself sought to forget their birth. Unlike many xenos species whose beginnings are catalogued with grim efficiency by the Adeptus Mechanicus or chronicled in ancient records, the Uvath defy such clarity. What little is known of their genesis comes from fragmented accounts unearthed from the ruins of their dominion in the Calyx Expanse, accounts steeped in mystery and contradictions. These fragments hint at a species not born of natural evolution, but shaped by forces that defy comprehension. The Uvath were not a race in the traditional sense. Their essence seems to have transcended physicality, manifesting in forms both corporeal and incorporeal. Early records suggest they may have originated in an isolated region of the galaxy, far from the prying eyes of other civilizations. Some theories posit that they emerged in the distant past, during an era when the warp and the material realm were less rigidly divided. This period, often referred to in esoteric circles as the Age of Shadows, is thought to have been a time when beings of great ambition sought to bridge the two realities, forging unnatural unions between flesh and the immaterium. It is within this context that the Yuvath appear to have risen, not through natural evolution, but through deliberate experimentation with the energies of the warp. Unlike many species who fear the immaterium's chaotic influence, the Yuvath embraced it as their foundation. Their early existence seems to have been one of relentless adaptation, mastering the manipulation of both matter and spirit to achieve their goals. Some accounts claim they began as a mortal species, but quickly abandoned their organic limitations, reshaping themselves into beings infused with the warp's power. This transformation marked the start of their ascendancy, as they discovered the means to wield their newfound abilities with unmatched precision. The Yuvath's initial forays into the galaxy were characterized by their insatiable thirst for domination. They were not content to merely explore or trade. Their nature demanded conquest. This drive was deeply intertwined with their understanding of the warp, which they used not only as a tool, but as a source of sustenance. Entire civilizations fell under their sway, their populations harvested to fuel the Yuvath's unholy technologies. Through arcane rituals, they enslaved the souls of the living, binding them into horrific constructs that served as both weapons and symbols of their power. What is particularly striking about the Yuvath's early history is their relationship with the warp. While other species, such as the Eldar, wielded psychic powers with a degree of caution or reverence, the Yuvath treated the immaterium as a resource to be exploited without restraint. They built vast networks of arcane machines and obelisks, channeling the warp's energy to sustain their empire and fuel their expansion. These machines, referred to in recovered texts as shards, were said to be imbued with fragments of the Yuvath's own essence, making them extensions of their will. The rise of the Yuvath was not without its challenges. Their unrestrained use of the warp drew the attention of rival powers, including the nascent civilizations of humanity. Records from these early interactions are scarce, but there are indications that the Yuvath clashed with human settlers and other xenos empires, often subjugating or annihilating them. Despite their successes, their rapid expansion and reliance on warp energies left them vulnerable to certain natural and artificial phenomena, which would later contribute to their eventual downfall. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Yuvath's beginnings is their lack of a central biological identity. Unlike most species that evolve along a single genetic line, the Yuvath seem to have abandoned such constraints. Their forms were as mutable as their power, allowing them to adapt to any situation. This lack of physical uniformity has led some scholars to speculate that the Yuvath were not a single species at all, but a collective of entities united by their mastery of the warp. Whether they were originally a species or a cult of warp worshippers who transcended their mortal origins remains a mystery, one that continues to haunt those who study their legacy. As their power grew, so too did the complexity of their society. They constructed immense cities and citadels, each one a monument to their mastery over both the physical and immaterial realms. These structures served as focal points for their power, anchoring their empire and enabling them to extend their influence across the stars. It was in these early years that the Yuvath developed the technologies and rituals that would define their civilization, blending arcane science with sorcery to create devices and weapons of unparalleled potency. The story of the Yuvath's rise is one of ambition unbound by morality or fear. They saw the galaxy not as a place to coexist with other species, but as a canvas upon which to impose their will. Their mastery of the warp and their relentless drive for power set them apart from any other xenos race, making them a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Yet, their beginnings also sowed the seeds of their eventual undoing, as their dependence on the warp and their hubris would draw the ire of powers far greater than themselves. With the Yuvath established as a dominant force in their corner of the galaxy, their story would soon intertwine with that of the expanding human empire and the inexorable march of the Great Crusade. But before their clash with the Imperium, their empire would reach its zenith, becoming a beacon of darkness and corruption that would leave an indelible mark on the Calyx expanse and beyond. To understand their true nature and the scope of their influence, we must now turn to the timeline of events that shaped their rise and fall. The creation of the Yuvath was not a random occurrence. It was the result of a unique confluence of circumstances that aligned within the galaxy's turbulent history. Their emergence is tied to the cosmic forces that shaped the universe, where the boundaries between reality and the immaterium blurred. To understand the genesis of the Yuvath, one must delve into the ancient epics when chaos reigned unchecked, and the galaxy was a crucible of transformation. Long before the Age of Strife, before the rise of the Imperium, the galaxy was a realm of unimaginable potential and danger. Countless civilizations flourished, each experimenting with the latent energies that pulsed beneath the fabric of reality. Among these was a forgotten progenitor species, an enigmatic precursor whose thirst for knowledge and power exceeded its capacity for restraint. This species, long since erased from history, may have inadvertently laid the foundation for the Yuvath by unlocking forbidden paths into the warp. Their experiments were not aimed at controlling the warp as other psychically gifted races might, but at merging their physical forms with its unbridled energies. This convergence marked the beginning of something entirely new, a blending of the tangible and the ethereal. The warp, a realm of raw emotion and psychic energy, was both a source of inspiration and a wellspring of corruption. The progenitors of the Yuvath sought to use this energy to ascend beyond the limitations of their biology. They created tools, rituals, and machines designed to harness the immaterium's chaotic power. At first, these experiments appeared to succeed, granting them extraordinary abilities. Their technology grew more advanced, their civilizations more grandiose. They seemed destined to transcend mortality itself. However, the immaterium is not a gift freely given. It exacts a toll on those who seek to manipulate it. The more the progenitors drew upon the warp, the more they became entwined with its malign influence. Their society began to fracture, torn between those who embraced their transformation and those who resisted the encroaching corruption. Civil war erupted, devastating entire systems and reducing thriving worlds to ruins. Amid this chaos, the seeds of the Yuvath were sown. The faction that embraced the warp entirely sought to leave behind their fragile corporeal forms. They envisioned a new existence where they would no longer be bound by the constraints of flesh and time. Their transformation was not a sudden event, but a gradual process of warping and remaking, fueled by rituals that merged their essence with the immaterium. These beings became the first true Yuvath, their forms mutable and intertwined with the warp itself. They were no longer merely physical entities, but something far more alien, a fusion of sentient energy, willpower, and residual flesh. What allowed the Yuvath to flourish was their mastery of soul binding, a perverse technique that drew upon the psychic energy of other beings. By enslaving the souls of their victims, they created constructs infused with warp energy, capable of immense power and complete subservience. This practice not only gave them unparalleled military might, but also served as a means to sustain their continued transformation. Their empire was built upon the suffering and exploitation of countless other species, each conquest feeding their insatiable hunger for power. Their emergence was also influenced by the cosmic geography of their domain. The Calyx expanse, where the Yuvath rose to prominence, was a region rife with warp anomalies and unstable currents. These anomalies may have served as a catalyst, amplifying their ability to tap into the immaterium and shielding their nascent empire from outside interference. This isolation allowed them to develop without challenge for millennia, perfecting their unnatural symbiosis with the warp and spreading their influence across the stars. But there was more to their creation than ambition and circumstance. The Uvath's rise was marked by a deep philosophical shift, a rejection of the natural order in favor of absolute dominion over reality itself. They viewed the galaxy as an empty slate upon which they could impose their will, a realm where the laws of physics and morality were meaningless. Their technology reflected this belief, fusing advanced machinery with the psychic constructs of the warp. They created machines that were not merely tools, but extensions of their will, animated by enslaved spirits and designed to reshape the material world. The culmination of these factors, their progenitors' ambition, their mastery of the warp, and their unyielding philosophy, resulted in a species unlike any other. The Uvath did not evolve. They were forged, a deliberate creation born of hubris and desperation. Their beginnings were a tale of relentless pursuit, a race that chose to abandon its humanity, or whatever passed for it, in exchange for a power that would ultimately consume them. Yet, their genesis also planted the seeds of their destruction. Their reliance on the warp made them vulnerable to its chaotic nature, while their methods of domination ensured they would be forever hunted by those who sought to end their reign. The galaxy is a cruel and unforgiving place, and no species, no matter how powerful, can escape the consequences of their actions. With their foundations laid, the Uvath expanded their empire, spreading darkness and corruption wherever they went. Their story, however, was far from over, as the events that followed would shape their legacy and bring them into direct conflict with the forces of the Great Crusade. To understand their rise and eventual fall, one must trace the timeline of their dark ascent and the calamitous events that defined their reign. The Uvath's dark legacy is woven into the tapestry of galactic history, a series of events that chart their rise to power and eventual eradication. Their timeline is not a straightforward path, but a series of escalating atrocities, technological advancements, and violent confrontations that left an indelible mark on the Calyx expanse and beyond. Each event offers a glimpse into their power, their ambitions, and the eventual hubris that led to their destruction. The earliest recorded accounts of the Uvath's activity come from the ruins of civilizations scattered across the Calyx expanse, where archaeologists and rogue traders have uncovered evidence of their conquests. These discoveries point to a systematic campaign of expansion that began with the subjugation of nearby worlds. The Uvath's methods were terrifyingly effective. They would descend upon a planet, unleashing constructs powered by enslaved souls and devastating weaponry that blended arcane energy with advanced technology. Resistance was futile. Populations were either enslaved or exterminated, their souls harvested to fuel the Uvath's growing power. The creation of the shard networks was a pivotal moment in their timeline, marking their mastery of the immaterium. These massive constructs, scattered across the Calyx expanse, acted as conduits for warp energy, enabling the Uvath to manipulate reality on a planetary scale. These networks allowed them to terraform worlds, create fortresses suspended in the void, and summon constructs of unimaginable power. The shard networks were both their greatest strength and a symbol of their dominance, anchoring their empire and spreading their influence across the stars. As their empire expanded, the Uvath began to experiment with more horrific applications of their warp-based technology. One of the most infamous examples was their creation of soul forges, massive structures where the spirits of the enslaved were bound and consumed. These forges powered their armies and fueled their arcane rituals, allowing them to conquer even the most resilient foes. The soul forges became the dark heart of their empire, and their very existence was an affront to the natural order of the galaxy. Despite their dominance, the Uvath were not unchallenged. Various xenos species, many of them now extinct, attempted to resist their tyranny. Some even formed coalitions to oppose the Uvath's relentless advance. These alliances were short-lived, as the Uvath's ability to manipulate the warp allowed them to outmaneuver and destroy their enemies with ease. Entire fleets were torn apart by warp storms conjured by the Yuvath, and planets were reduced to lifeless husks through their unholy rituals. The galaxy seemed unable to produce a force capable of halting their rise. The arrival of humanity in the Calyx Expanse marked a turning point in the Yuvath's timeline. Initially, human settlers were no more than another resource to be exploited. Colonies were raised, their inhabitants enslaved or sacrificed to the Soul Forges. However, humanity's persistence and adaptability proved to be a greater challenge than the Yuvath anticipated. Early human resistance was scattered and disorganized, but as more settlers arrived, the seeds of rebellion began to take root. The Yuvath's downfall was accelerated by their own hubris. As their empire grew, so too did their reliance on the warp. This dependence made them increasingly vulnerable to its unpredictable nature. The shard networks, once their greatest achievement, became a double-edged sword. When disrupted, these networks caused catastrophic feedback that could obliterate entire systems. These vulnerabilities were not immediately apparent, but they would later be exploited by their enemies. The Great Crusade brought the full might of the Imperium to the Calyx Expanse, and with it, the Yuvath faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered. The Imperial forces, armed with advanced technology and guided by the Emperor's vision, launched a relentless campaign to purge the galaxy of xenos threats. The Yuvath, though powerful, were not invincible. Their reliance on warp-based technology proved to be their undoing, as the Imperium deployed psychers and mechanicum specialists to neutralize their shard networks and soul forges. One of the most significant battles in this campaign occurred on a planet known in Imperial records as Zalamis. This world, a central hub of Yuvath activity, was home to one of their largest shard networks and a soul forge of unprecedented scale. The Imperium's assault on Zalamis was brutal, with entire regiments sacrificed to breach the Yuvath's defenses. The battle culminated in the destruction of the shard network, an event that caused a warp cascade, annihilating the planet and erasing the Yuvath's presence from the system. The fall of Zalamis marked the beginning of the end for the Yuvath. Their empire, once sprawling and unassailable, began to crumble under the Imperium's relentless advance. Worlds that had been under their dominion for millennia were liberated, their populations too broken to celebrate their freedom. The Yuvath's forces, weakened and scattered, were hunted down and destroyed. Yet, even as their empire fell, the Yuvath did not go quietly. They unleashed desperate measures to stave off extinction, summoning warp entities and unleashing weapons of terrifying power. These acts of defiance only cemented their reputation as one of the most malevolent forces the galaxy had ever faced. Their final moments were not a surrender, but an inferno of destruction that left scars on the Calyx Expanse, both physical and psychic, that linger to this day. The events surrounding the Yuvath's rise and fall are a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of the warp. Their timeline, though fragmented, offers a chilling narrative of power gained and lost, a cycle of creation and destruction that serves as a warning to all who would follow in their footsteps. With their empire extinguished, the galaxy was left to recover from the devastation they wrought, but their shadow endures in the form of artifacts, ruins, and the persistent whispers of their dark legacy. The key event that defines the Yuvath's dark legacy and marks the turning point in their story is the Siege of Kalis Void, a catastrophic conflict that embodied the full scope of their malevolence and their ultimate vulnerability. This monumental battle not only sealed the fate of the Yuvath's empire, but also reshaped the Calyx Expanse, leaving scars that persist in the warp and the memories of those who survived. Kalis Void was not a planet, but a colossal artificial construct suspended in the depths of space, hidden within the swirling currents of a massive warp anomaly. The Yuvath had transformed it into the heart of their empire, a nexus of shard networks and soul forges that sustained their dominion. This structure was both their sanctuary and their greatest weapon, capable of projecting immense warp energy across the stars. Its power was unmatched, and for centuries, it ensured their supremacy in the region. The significance of Kalis Void lay not only in its strategic importance, but in the sheer magnitude of its corruption. The construct housed billions of enslaved souls, their torment fueling the Yuvath's rituals and technologies. The air within its vast halls was thick with the psychic residue of despair, and the very fabric of the construct pulsed with unnatural energy. It was a place where the boundary between reality and the immaterium was thin, where the Yuvath's mastery of the warp reached its zenith. The Imperium's discovery of Kalis Void during the Great Crusade marked the beginning of an unprecedented campaign. Intelligence gathered from liberated worlds painted a grim picture of the Yuvath's operations, pointing to Kalis Void as the epicenter of their power. The decision to assault the construct was not taken lightly. The Imperial commanders knew that a direct attack would require overwhelming force and incur catastrophic losses. Nevertheless, the destruction of Kalis Void was deemed essential to the eradication of the Yuvath. The assault began with the mobilization of a massive Imperial fleet, supported by contingents of Adeptus Mechanicus, Psychers, and specialized shock troops. The fleet's approach was fraught with peril, as the Yuvath used the warp anomaly surrounding Kalis Void to create violent storms and spatial distortions. Entire vessels were lost before the Imperium even reached their target, their crews consumed by the Immaterium or torn apart by unnatural gravitational forces. Upon breaching the anomaly, the Imperial forces were met with resistance on a scale they had never encountered. The Yuvath unleashed fleets of soul-bound constructs, immense war machines animated by the spirits of the enslaved. These entities defied the conventions of warfare, their forms mutable and their weaponry devastating. The Imperial fleet fought desperately to clear a path to Kalis Void, sacrificing countless ships to breach the Yuvath's defensive lines. When ground forces finally deployed onto the construct, they faced horrors beyond comprehension. The halls of Kalis Void were a labyrinth of darkened corridors, pulsating with warp energy and infested with traps and constructs designed to disorient and annihilate intruders. The air was thick with psychic pressure, assaulting the minds of the attackers and driving some to madness. Despite these challenges, the Imperium pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure would doom the Calyx expanse. The pivotal moment of the siege came when the Imperial forces reached the central nexus of the Shard network. Here, the Yuvath had concentrated their power, constructing an immense obelisk that served as both a conduit for warp energy and a symbol of their dominion. The obelisk radiated an aura of dread, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with malevolent light. Destroying it was essential to dismantling the Yuvath's network and cutting off their source of power. The assault on the Nexus was led by a coalition of elite troops and psychers, supported by Mechanicus specialists equipped with arcane countermeasures. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with the Yuvath summoning warp entities to defend their stronghold. These entities were unlike anything the Imperium had faced, manifestations of pure malice, immune to conventional weaponry, and capable of bending reality to their will. The fighting reached a crescendo as the Imperium deployed their final gambit, a Psyker detachment tasked with destabilizing the Shard network by channeling the raw energy of the warp against itself. The detachment's efforts triggered a catastrophic chain reaction within the obelisk. As the Shard network collapsed, it unleashed a massive warp cascade that consumed the Nexus in a storm of energy. The explosion tore through Kalis Void, annihilating vast sections of the construct and causing it to implode. The destruction of the Nexus marked the turning point of the battle, as the Yuvath's constructs faltered and their resistance crumbled. Though the Imperium ultimately emerged victorious, the cost was staggering. Thousands of lives were lost, and the psychic backlash from the destruction of the Shard network left many survivors scarred, their minds shattered by the Immaterium's fury. Kalis Void was reduced to a drifting ruin, its remnants scattered across the warp anomaly. The Yuvath's power was broken, their empire reduced to scattered remnants incapable of mounting further resistance. The siege of Kalis Void was a decisive victory for the Imperium, but it also served as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by the warp and the entities that sought to wield it. The battle's aftermath left the Calyx Expanse scarred, its stars haunted by the lingering echoes of the Yuvath's malevolence. Even in defeat, their legacy persisted, a testament to the destructive potential of unchecked ambition and the enduring threat of the Immaterium. The influence of the Yuvath on the galaxy extends far beyond their extinction, casting a long shadow over the Calyx Expanse and the wider Imperium. Though their empire was shattered during the Great Crusade, the scars they left behind continue to shape the fate of countless worlds. Their mastery of warp-based technology, their unholy practices, and the lingering remnants of their dark empire remain a source of both fear and fascination, reminding the galaxy of the dangers inherent in unchecked ambition. The most immediate impact of the Yuvath's fall was the destabilization of the Calyx Expanse. This region, once dominated by their empire, was left in chaos following their destruction. Worlds that had been under their control for centuries were suddenly abandoned, their populations shattered by centuries of enslavement and psychic torment. For many of these planets, liberation brought little relief. The infrastructure and cultures that had sustained them were destroyed, leaving only ruins and broken societies. The Imperium, despite its overwhelming power, struggled to integrate these worlds into its fold, often resorting to extermination or servitude to maintain order. Artifacts and remnants of the Yuvath's empire, scattered across the Calyx Expanse, remain potent and dangerous. These objects, infused with warp energy and powered by enslaved souls, are sources of immense power and immense peril. Rogue traders and treasure hunters who stumble upon these relics often meet grisly ends, either consumed by the artifact's corruptive influence or hunted by agents of the Ordo Xenos seeking to contain their spread. The Adeptus Mechanicus, with their insatiable thirst for knowledge, have recovered fragments of Yuvath technology, but these discoveries are tightly controlled, lest they unleash forces beyond their control. One of the most profound impacts of the Yuvath's legacy is the psychic scars they left on the Immaterium. The warp, already a chaotic and dangerous realm, was further destabilized by their actions. The shard networks and soul forges they constructed created rifts between the material realm and the Immaterium, many of which remain active to this day. These rifts serve as breeding grounds for demonic entities, making the Calyx Expanse a hotbed of warp incursions. Navigators and psychers operating in this region report frequent disturbances, including violent storms and sudden apparitions of demonic entities. These phenomena make travel and communication within the Expanse perilous, further isolating its worlds. The Yuvath's exploitation of souls and their integration of warp energy into technology also left a lasting impression on the Imperium's understanding of these forces. While their methods are considered heretical and abhorrent, the knowledge gleaned from their artifacts has influenced certain clandestine branches of the Mechanicus and the Inquisition. These factions study the Yuvath not to replicate their practices, but to better understand the dangers of the warp and to develop countermeasures against similar threats. However, this pursuit of knowledge is fraught with risk, as even the most well-meaning efforts can lead to corruption. Culturally, the Yuvath are remembered as a cautionary tale within the Imperium. Their downfall serves as a stark reminder of the perils of hubris and the consequences of delving too deeply into forbidden knowledge. Ecclesiarchal authorities use their story to reinforce the teachings of the Emperor, emphasizing the importance of faith and vigilance in the face of corruption. Many of the worlds they once controlled now house shrines and monuments dedicated to those who perished resisting their tyranny, serving as grim reminders of their reign. Despite their destruction, whispers of the Yuvath's return persist. In the depths of the Calyx Expanse, rumors circulate of rogue psychers and heretical cults attempting to resurrect their practices. Some even claim that fragments of the Yuvath still exist, hidden within the warp or dormant in forgotten corners of the galaxy. These tales, whether true or not, fuel the paranoia of imperial authorities, leading to increased purges and investigations in regions associated with their legacy. The Yuvath's influence also extends beyond the Calyx expanse, shaping how the Imperium approaches similar threats. The strategies and tactics developed during the campaign against them have informed the Imperium's approach to dealing with warp-based xenos and heretical technologies. These methods, while brutal, are considered essential for maintaining the Emperor's vision of a unified galaxy. The extermination of the Yuvath has become a template for future conflicts, a grim example of what must be done to ensure the survival of humanity. On a more esoteric level, the Yuvath's manipulation of souls and their integration with the warp has led to theological debates within the ecclesiarchy and the Ordo Malleus. Their practices raise unsettling questions about the nature of the soul, its connection to the immaterium, and the limits of human understanding. These discussions are largely confined to secretive circles, as openly exploring such topics risks accusations of heresy. For the people of the Calyx expanse, the Yuvath are more than a distant memory. They are a specter that continues to haunt their lives. Folk tales and superstitions about the Yuvath permeate the cultures of the region, warning against venturing into ruins or tampering with ancient artifacts. These stories, passed down through generations, serve as both a reminder of the past and a warning for the future. They speak of shadowy figures that linger at the edges of reality, waiting for the chance to reclaim their lost empire. The lasting impact of the Yuvath is a testament to their power and the horrors they unleashed upon the galaxy. Though they were ultimately defeated, their legacy endures as a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkness and the price of confronting them. Their story is not merely one of destruction, but of the indelible marks left by their ambition, their cruelty, and their fall. The Yuvath were a civilization defined by their stark departure from conventional understanding of life, technology, and the immaterium. Their mastery of the warp and its integration into every aspect of their existence created a civilization that was unique, horrifying, and utterly alien in both purpose and execution. While many xenos races developed advanced technologies or psychic capabilities, the Yuvath combined these elements in ways that transcended the boundaries of morality, nature, and even the laws of physics. One of the most striking aspects of the Yuvath was their manipulation of souls. Where other civilizations revered or feared the immaterial essence of sentient beings, the Yuvath saw souls as a resource to be harvested, shaped, and consumed. Through their soul forges, they enslaved the spirits of the living and the dead alike, binding them into constructs or using them as fuel for their technologies. These forges were not mere tools, but focal points of their empire, capable of extracting psychic energy from entire populations to power their war machines and rituals. This practice elevated them above the constraints of conventional biology, allowing them to create entities that were neither wholly alive nor fully dead, abominations that blurred the line between sentience and servitude. Their shard network technology was another defining feature. These massive crystalline structures served as conduits for warp energy, allowing the Yuvath to manipulate the immaterium on a scale unmatched by any other known species. These networks were not static. They were living systems, constantly adapting and evolving in response to their environment. Each shard acted as an anchor, stabilizing the warp in specific regions while simultaneously amplifying its destructive potential elsewhere. This dual purpose made the shard networks both a weapon and a tool of empire building, enabling the Yuvath to terraform worlds, create impenetrable fortresses, and unleash devastating warp storms against their enemies. The Yuvath's constructs were another unique element of their civilization. These entities, often referred to as soul-bound constructs, were not machines in the traditional sense. Instead, they were amalgamations of warp energy, enslaved spirits, and physical materials, animated by the Yuvath's will. These constructs ranged from small, nimble drones to towering war machines capable of devastating entire battlefields. What set them apart was their autonomy and adaptability. Each construct possessed a semblance of intelligence derived from the souls bound within it, allowing it to learn and evolve in real time. This made them formidable adversaries, as they could adapt to enemy tactics and exploit weaknesses with uncanny precision. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Yuvath was their approach to life and death. To them, mortality was a limitation to be overcome, not a natural cycle. They actively sought to transcend physical existence, reshaping themselves and others into forms better suited to their goals. This transformation was not limited to their own kind. Enslaved populations were subjected to horrific experiments, their bodies and minds twisted into new forms of life. These creations were often used as weapons or tools, their suffering a testament to the Yuvath's disregard for the sanctity of life. This philosophy of transformation extended to their technology, which was designed to interface seamlessly with organic and psychic elements, creating hybrids that defied categorization. Their understanding of the warp was another defining trait. While many species feared the immaterium or approached it with reverence, the Yuvath treated it as a resource to be manipulated without restraint. They developed rituals and technologies that allowed them to harness the raw power of the warp with precision, creating effects that bordered on sorcery. This mastery gave them unparalleled control over reality itself, enabling them to bend the laws of physics, manipulate time and space, and summon entities from the immaterium to serve their purposes. This control, however, came at a cost, as their reliance on the warp made them vulnerable to its chaotic nature. The architectural style of the Yuvath was equally unique, reflecting their blend of advanced technology and arcane power. Their structures were monolithic and otherworldly, constructed from materials that seemed to shift and shimmer with warp energy. These buildings often defied conventional geometry, with angles and shapes that appeared impossible to comprehend. Their interiors were labyrinthine, filled with pulsating conduits of energy and chambers that radiated an oppressive psychic presence. Each structure was both a functional facility and a monument to their dominion, designed to instill awe and terror in all who beheld them. The Yuvath's cultural philosophy revolved around the pursuit of power and the rejection of natural limitations. They viewed the galaxy not as a place to coexist with other species, but as a resource to be exploited. This philosophy was reflected in their governance, which operated as a hierarchy of power and knowledge. The strongest and most skilled wielders of warp energy held dominance, their authority reinforced by their ability to command and create constructs. This hierarchy extended to their creations, with the most advanced constructs serving as extensions of their master's will. Another unique element of the Yuvath was their ability to interact with the immaterium in ways that eluded even the most advanced psychers of other species. They developed devices that could stabilize warp anomalies, manipulate psychic currents, and even create temporary breaches between dimensions. These capabilities allowed them to travel vast distances instantaneously, communicate across the immaterium, and unleash devastating attacks on their enemies. Their understanding of these phenomena was far beyond that of any imperial scholar, making their relics objects of both fascination and dread. Finally, the Yuvath's relationship with their own creations set them apart. Unlike other species that viewed their technology as tools, the Yuvath saw their constructs as extensions of themselves. Each creation was imbued with a fragment of their essence, making it a living part of their civilization. This symbiosis blurred the line between creator and creation, resulting in a society where individuality and collective will were indistinguishable. This unity gave them a level of coordination and adaptability that was almost impossible to counter, as every action was part of a larger, cohesive strategy. The Yuvath were a civilization of paradoxes, a race that transcended life and death, wielded both technology and sorcery, and sought both dominion and transcendence. Their unique aspects made them one of the most formidable and feared forces the galaxy has ever known, and their legacy continues to challenge the understanding of those who dare to study it. The story of the Yuvath is not just one of a faceless alien empire. It is also shaped by individuals whose fates became entwined with their rise and fall. From the enigmatic leaders of the Yuvath themselves to the brave and tragic figures who opposed them, the characters tied to their legacy provide a human and inhuman lens through which to understand their impact on the galaxy. The most mysterious figures in the Yuvath's history are their rulers, known in fragmented records as the Shard Sovereigns. These beings were the architects of their empire, each one embodying the unholy fusion of warp energy and conscious will that defined their civilization. Unlike mortal rulers, the Shard Sovereigns were not confined to physical bodies. They were semi-immaterial entities, their essence dispersed across the shard networks that anchored their dominion. This gave them an omnipresent awareness within their territories, allowing them to exert absolute control over their constructs and enslaved populations. Each sovereign wielded a unique facet of the Yuvath's power, from soul manipulation to mastery over warp storms. Their names and individual histories are lost to time, but legends persist of their malevolent intellects and their ability to warp reality with mere thought. One particularly infamous Shard Sovereign is remembered in forbidden texts as Vorthin the Shaper. Vorthin was said to be the architect of the Yuvath's soul-binding techniques, perfecting the horrific rituals that enslaved the spirits of countless victims. His creations were among the most feared grotesque amalgamations of living tissue and warp-forged machinery designed to spread terror and destruction. Vorthin's fall came during the Great Crusade, when Imperial forces shattered his shard network, severing his connection to the Immaterium and destroying his essence. Even so, fragments of his influence are rumored to linger in certain relics, continuing to corrupt those who stumble upon them. The human opposition to the Yuvath also produced figures of extraordinary significance. Among them was Lord General Arctus Dravain, a military commander who played a key role in the campaign to eradicate their presence from the Calyx Expanse. Dravain's leadership was defined by his unwavering resolve and his innovative strategies, which often involved the use of Mechanicus technology to counter the Yuvath's warp-based tactics. One of his most famous victories was the Battle of Zothar Rift, where he coordinated a daring assault on a Yuvath shard fortress, neutralizing its defenses and paving the way for a decisive Imperial advance. Dravain's death during the siege of Kalis Void marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on in the countless worlds freed from the Yuvath's grip. Another notable figure was Inquisitor Vale Terras of the Ordo Xenos, who dedicated her life to studying the remnants of the Yuvath in an effort to understand, and ultimately neutralize, their lingering influence. Terras was one of the first to document the dangers posed by Yuvath relics, compiling extensive records on their soul-binding artifacts and the cursed shard fragments that survived the destruction of their empire. Her work led to the establishment of containment protocols that remain in use by the Inquisition, but her obsession with the Yuvath came at a cost. Terras disappeared during an expedition to a ruined shard fortress, her fate unknown. Some believe she was consumed by the warp energies she sought to study, while others claim she uncovered truths too dangerous to share. The rogue trader dynasties of the Calyx Expanse also produced figures whose fortunes were tied to the Yuvath. One such individual was Captain Jorath Keel, whose exploration of Yuvath ruins earned him both immense wealth and notoriety. Keel's most infamous discovery was the Obelisk of Athrek, a towering shard fragment imbued with residual warp energy. The artifact brought him great power, allowing him to dominate rival traders and expand his influence, but it also corrupted his crew and ship, ultimately leading to his downfall. Keel's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of Yuvath artifacts, a lesson often ignored by those who seek their power. On the other side of the spectrum were the unsung heroes of the Calyx Expanse's liberation. Among them was Sister Aurelia Dorn of the Adepta Sororitas, who led a resistance movement on the enslaved world of Tereth Prime. Dorn's faith and resilience inspired her fellow captives to rise against their Yuvath overlords, sabotaging shard machines and disrupting soul-harvesting operations. Her martyrdom during the final liberation of Sarath Prime cemented her place as a symbol of hope and defiance, her name honored in shrines across the expanse. Even within the Yuvath's dominion, there were those who sought to rebel against their masters. One such figure is known only as the Harbinger, a mysterious individual who appears in fragmented accounts as a saboteur and traitor to the Yuvath. The Harbinger's origins are unclear. Some speculate they were a member of a subjugated race who gained knowledge of the Yuvath's technology, while others suggest they were a rogue construct that turned against its creators. Whatever their true nature, the Harbinger's actions were instrumental in undermining the Yuvath's defenses during the Great Crusade, planting the seeds of their downfall from within. Finally, the legacy of the Yuvath also includes those who seek to resurrect their power in the present day. Heretical cults, rogue psychers, and xenos-worshipping factions have all sought to harness the remnants of their empire, believing that the Yuvath's mastery of the warp holds the key to ultimate power. Figures such as Magos Ixtar, a renegade tech priest obsessed with recreating Yuvath constructs, and the Prophet of Vorthin, a shadowy cult leader claiming to channel the will of a long-dead shard sovereign, exemplify the enduring allure of their dark legacy. These individuals serve as a constant reminder that the Yuvath's influence, though diminished, remains a potent threat to the galaxy. The characters connected to the Yuvath, heroes, villains, and those caught in between, illustrate the breadth of their impact and the lasting resonance of their story. Their lives and deeds are testaments to the Yuvath's power, cruelty, and the enduring struggle to contain their legacy. The Yuvath, long extinguished from the galactic stage, left behind a legacy steeped in mystery, with secrets that even the most dedicated scholars and inquisitors have yet to unravel. Their mastery of the warp, their technologies, and the enigmatic structures they left behind remain subjects of fascination and fear. These lingering enigmas fuel speculation and investigation, as each discovery seems to raise more questions than answers. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the Yuvath is the origin of their soul-binding techniques. Despite the extensive records compiled by the Ordo Xenos and the Adeptus Mechanicus, no definitive explanation exists for how the Yuvath first learned to manipulate souls. Some theories suggest that they discovered ancient knowledge predating their civilization, possibly artifacts or texts left behind by an even older, forgotten race. Others propose that the Yuvath made a pact with demonic entities in the Immaterium, trading their allegiance for forbidden knowledge. This question remains unanswered, as no known relic or document directly explains the genesis of their soul manipulation practices. The shard networks, while studied extensively, also harbor profound secrets. These crystalline structures, capable of channeling and amplifying warp energy, defy much of the Imperium's understanding of both physics and metaphysics. Mechanicus explorators have recovered fragments of shattered shard obelisks, but their attempts to reverse engineer these devices have yielded little beyond frustration and sometimes catastrophic failures. One enduring mystery is whether the shard networks were purely Yuvath creations or if they were based on pre-existing phenomena within the Immaterium. Some theorists believe that the networks may have served not just as tools of power, but as conduits to something far greater, possibly linked to an overarching warp entity or an as-yet undiscovered realm within the Immaterium. The disappearance of entire Yuvath worlds is another haunting enigma. During the Great Crusade, numerous planets that had been under their dominion were found completely devoid of life, stripped bare of any evidence of their former presence. These vanished worlds remain unexplained. Some speculate that the Yuvath themselves destroyed these planets to deny their enemies any spoils of war, while others believe the Immaterium consumed them entirely as a consequence of their reckless experiments. A more chilling theory posits that these worlds were transported into the warp, where they continue to exist in some twisted parallel reality. Explorers who have ventured too close to these sites report strange phenomena, such as disembodied voices, inexplicable gravitational shifts, and fleeting visions of cities shimmering on the edges of reality. The nature of the Shard Sovereigns, the enigmatic rulers of the Yuvath, also remains an enduring question. Unlike traditional leaders, they seem to exist as manifestations of the Shard network itself, their consciousness spread across vast territories. Whether they were once physical beings who transcended their mortal forms or entirely immaterial entities born from the immaterium is unknown. Their apparent annihilation during the Great Crusade has not silenced all speculation, as some believe fragments of their essence may still linger in the warp. Whispers of their return occasionally surface among heretical cults, leading to heightened inquisitorial purges in the Calyx expanse. The Soul Forges, central to the Yuvath's dominion, contain mysteries that defy comprehension. These nightmarish structures operated as more than factories for their constructs. They were also gateways to the immaterium, where enslaved souls were transformed into raw psychic energy. Attempts to deactivate or dismantle these forges during the Great Crusade often led to catastrophic warp eruptions, suggesting that their operation was tied to delicate, unfathomable processes. Some scholars theorize that the forges functioned as ritualistic altars, sustaining the Yuvath's connection to the immaterium and possibly to entities within it. The few surviving fragments of these forges are among the most heavily guarded relics in the galaxy, kept under strict inquisitorial control to prevent their misuse. Another unresolved question revolves around the Yuvath's apparent absence in the historical records of other xenos civilizations. Despite their vast empire and their interaction with countless species, remarkably few non-human accounts of their existence have been uncovered. This lack of documentation has led to speculation that the Yuvath deliberately erased their presence from history, using their mastery of the warp to manipulate or destroy records. Alternatively, some believe that the Yuvath's existence was so deeply entwined with the immaterium that they operated on a plane incomprehensible to other civilizations, rendering them effectively invisible until it was too late. The role of demonic entities in the Yuvath's rise and fall is another source of speculation. While it is clear that their empire relied heavily on warp energy, the extent to which they interacted with or were influenced by demons is uncertain. Some evidence suggests that the Yuvath summoned and bound lesser warp entities to serve their needs, integrating them into their constructs and rituals. However, there are also accounts of powerful warp phenomena disrupting their dominion, leading some to hypothesize that they may have incurred the wrath of greater demonic powers. This possibility raises unsettling questions about whether the Yuvath's destruction was orchestrated not just by the Imperium, but by forces within the Immaterium itself. A more esoteric mystery lies in the relics that continue to emerge from Yuvath ruins. These artifacts, ranging from crystalline shards to soul-bound constructs, often exhibit properties that defy conventional understanding. Some seem to resonate with the thoughts and emotions of those who handle them, while others appear to act of their own volition, as if imbued with a form of consciousness. The most unsettling reports come from explorers who claim to have heard voices emanating from these relics, whispering promises of power or issuing cryptic warnings. Whether these phenomena are remnants of Yuvath technology, echoes of the enslaved souls bound within them, or something more sinister remains a topic of heated debate. Finally, the question of whether any true remnants of the Yuvath survive is one of the most persistent mysteries. While their empire was declared extinct during the Great Crusade, some scholars and rogue traders believe fragments of their civilization may endure, hidden in the Immaterium or in unexplored regions of the Calyx expanse. Occasional reports of strange, shard-like structures or fleeting encounters with constructs resembling their designs only add fuel to these theories. If any part of the Yuvath remains active, the implications for the galaxy could be dire, as even a fraction of their knowledge and power could unleash devastation on an unimaginable scale. The secrets of the Yuvath, though buried beneath millennia of destruction and suppression, continue to intrigue and terrify those who seek to uncover them. Their enigmatic legacy serves as a reminder of the dangers posed by the Immaterium and the price of delving too deeply into its mysteries. Each uncovered fragment, each whispered rumor, only deepens the sense of unease surrounding this ancient and enigmatic force. The tale of the Yuvath concludes not with triumph, but with an uneasy silence, a void in history where their empire once stood. Though their reign of terror ended millennia ago, their shadow lingers, woven into the fabric of the galaxy's story. The eradication of the Yuvath by the Imperium was hailed as a victory, but it came at a price that the Calyx Expanse and its inhabitants continue to pay. The echoes of their influence are not so easily extinguished, and their legacy remains a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk within the Immaterium. For the Imperium, the destruction of the Yuvath stands as a testament to the Emperor's will and humanity's resolve. The campaign against them was one of the defining moments of the Great Crusade, a crucible in which the strength and unity of humanity were tested against an enemy that defied comprehension. Yet even in victory, the scars left by the Yuvath endure. The Calyx Expanse remains a region fraught with danger, its warp-tainted ruins and artifacts drawing the curious, the desperate, and the foolish to their doom. The cost of eradicating the Yuvath was not merely measured in lives, but in the enduring instability of the Expanse itself, a legacy of corruption and destruction that persists to this day. For the galaxy as a whole, the Yuvath serve as a cautionary tale. They were a species that sought to transcend their limitations, to dominate reality through the manipulation of souls and the warp. In doing so, they fell prey to the same forces they sought to control, their ambition consuming them even as it elevated them to unimaginable heights. Their fall is a warning to those who would follow a similar path, a grim reminder that the Immaterium is not a tool to be mastered, but a force of chaos that corrupts and destroys all who dare to wield it. The ruins of the Yuvath's empire continue to draw attention, despite the dangers they pose. Rogue traders, heretical cults, and even agents of the Imperium scour their remnants for lost knowledge and relics of power. These fragments, though scattered and diminished, retain a potency that defies time. Each shard, each soul-bound construct, holds a piece of the Yuvath story and a glimpse of their terrible potential. For the Ordo Xenos and the Inquisition, containing the legacy of the Yuvath remains an ongoing struggle, a battle fought in the shadows to prevent their remnants from sparking new horrors. Yet even as the galaxy turns its focus to other threats, the possibility of the Yuvath's resurgence lingers at the edges of awareness. The Immaterium is a realm of infinite possibility, where time and space lose meaning and forgotten horrors can endure for eternity. Whispers of their return, though unconfirmed, are enough to keep the Inquisition vigilant. The idea that fragments of their consciousness might survive, hidden within the warp or dormant in forgotten relics, is a chilling prospect, one that fuels the paranoia and urgency of those charged with safeguarding humanity. For the people of the Calyx Expanse, the Yuvath are more than a historical footnote. Their story is woven into the region's identity, a source of both fear and grim determination. Generations have grown up in the shadow of their ruins, their cultures shaped by the memory of enslavement and liberation. Tales of the Yuvath are told as cautionary legends, their name invoked as a warning against hubris and corruption. Even now, the Expanse bears the psychic scars of their presence, its warp currents twisted and its stars haunted by the echoes of their reign. The legacy of the Yuvath is one of destruction, ambition, and hubris. It is a story that reflects the darkest aspects of existence, a mirror held up to the galaxy's own capacity for cruelty and corruption. Yet, it is also a story of resilience and defiance, of those who stood against them and endured, carving a future out of the ruins of their empire. The Yuvath may be gone, but their impact remains, shaping the galaxy in ways both seen and unseen. In the grim darkness of the far future, where survival is a constant struggle against the forces of chaos, xenos, and heresy, the Yuvath are a reminder of the perils that come with power unchecked and ambition unbound. They are a testament to the dangers of delving too deeply into forbidden knowledge and the price of underestimating the Immaterium's capacity for destruction. Their tale is not one of redemption or hope, but a warning, a message from the past to those who would dare to repeat it. The Yuvath are gone, but they are not forgotten. Their story, etched into the annals of the Imperium and whispered among the stars, endures as a grim chapter in the galaxy's endless struggle for survival. It is a story that serves as both a reminder of humanity's triumphs and a caution against its deepest fears. The Calyx Expanse continues to bear witness to their legacy, a region forever scarred by their presence and shaped by the memory of their fall. In the end, the Yuvath's greatest impact may not be the empire they built or the horrors they unleashed, but the lessons they left behind, lessons that will echo through the galaxy for millennia to come.